All right, sorry for the delay, everyone. We're just having a little trouble with the live stream, so just getting the last little detail ironed out on that, and we can open the meeting. And you just let me know when you're ready. Let's go to. You got it? Yeah. Set. All right, we are streaming on YouTube in all the usual places. I will call us to order at 7:05. First up is commendations. Anybody have any commendations this week? Okay, then we will move. Yasin is actually, he reached out to me yesterday and he's going to join us next week since 2 weeks in a row he wasn't going to have quite enough stuff to report on. So he will be with us next week tonight. And that moves us to public comment. So if anybody wants to make public comment, please use the raise hand function and I will call on you. Just remember to state your name and address for the record. And the length of it will be 3 minutes. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. All right, Josh Barron, go ahead.
Thank you, Josh Barron, 17 Vassar Road. I want to, first of all, thank you, Sarah and Dr. Bucky, for your committed leadership during this difficult time. Dr. Bucky, I can't imagine a more challenging start to your career as a superintendent, and I'm deeply grateful for your continued efforts to do the right thing for our children and community. I recently heard some troubling comments suggesting that the children of a member of the school committee were receiving special accommodations for COVID-related reasons, including the use of scarce school space and personnel, as well as influencing the location of a school-related performance. Now, I don't know enough to know whether these comments reflect reality or unsubstantiated, but I do know something about good governance, both from being a business school teacher on the topic and in leading governance workshops with a major city school board. So I have 3 related questions. First of all, what process is in place to approve any accommodations given to children of school committee members to ensure those accommodations are equally available to all students? The second is, what process is in place to allow any teachers or school leaders to raise questions or concerns they would have about requested accommodations without fear of potential retaliation? And third, what action will be taken to investigate this situation in light of the potential impact on the reputation of the school and district? If there's no validity to these comments, then it would be valuable to have that shared with the community to avoid any further speculation. The integrity of our district depends on our confidence that there is no abuse of power by any member of our school committee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Josh. If you could email us those questions. Public comment is not a back and forth, and so but we would be happy to email you with responses. Jess Benedetto.
Hi, good evening. Jessica Benedetto, 8 Bradley Road. This is based on an email that I sent to the school committee members, Michelle Cresta and Dr. Bucky, after the meeting 2 weeks ago. I'd like to thank you for the informative update on the pay-to-ride busing program at the last meeting. I'd like to start off by saying that this year's pilot program on the bus has been a complete game changer for our family, as my son has had a positive experience riding the bus. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'd like to point out some details about what was said at the last night meeting in the bus update, and lastly propose a compromise to the current bus system that would utilize the driver and bus to maximal efficiency. Michelle, when you point out that the bus program was quote unquote full and had a wait list of 30 people, this does not fully describe the utilization of each bus, broken down by run number 1, Humphrey Street, 2, Marblehead Neck, and run number 3, Old Town and Transfer Station area. I'm sure that run number 1 and 2 are full, but actually run number 3 has about 10 to 15 kids each morning who actually utilize the bus. I know this because my son uses it regularly, and I have seen the bus and talked to him specifically. In the afternoon, the bus run combines 2 and 3 together due to the driver's shortage. So this quote unquote full bus will not be full next year if we have a dedicated bus for just afternoon run number 3. If run number 3 is going to Old Town and then the transfer station area has its own run, there is room to add additional riders to this route for morning and afternoon. This area of town does not have as many kids as the Humphrey Street neighborhoods. However, a bus through this area is mandated because we are more than 2 miles from Brown School. Additionally, run number 3 currently services Village and Brown, literally passes by Veterans School both in the morning and afternoon run. Veterans School is specifically along its route. Could we pilot just adding 7th and 8th graders to run number 3 to the pay to ride program? I believe we could do this without changing any of the start times, which was your reasoning verbalized in the last meeting as to why we don't offer busing to anyone in grades 7 through 12. The stop at Veterans could utilize the front access of the school, avoiding the Vine Street loop in the back. There is room for a bus to pull over there easily to drop off and pick up students. I would like to propose to the school committee adding veteran students to the pay to ride program for the next school year for run number 3 only, contingent on space available and a dedicated bus and driver for run number 3. Could this be proposed for a vote by the school committee as a pilot project with the contingency of it being reevaluated after 1 year? Could we consider even offering space on a bus for a morning run only or afternoon run only, as many other districts offer these options to families?
Time's up, Jess.
This would augment the program's funding by adding stipends paid by those families. And lastly, I applaud your work on the budget and your diligence and persistence in asking our community to fund our schools through an override. If we propose to offer services that will benefit more students in the community and thus decrease traffic, it's more likely that tax-paying parents and community members will be willing to vote in support of an override. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
So I don't know where this goes, but can we just get at some point an update, the bus audit? Have we got a response to that yet? Okay.
Look, it will be on the agenda when we do have that bus audit.
Okay.
Catherine Martin.
Catherine Martin, 29 West Shore Drive. I was actually just on this call to listen tonight, but I am so appalled that a member of the public would bring up a member of your committee's children, that you didn't speak up and ask them to stop. I'm disgusted by that. Your children are all off limits. Everybody's children are off limits. And somebody in positions of leadership should have stopped that comment. We all have personal situations. Some of our kids have IEPs. Some of them have 401c, whatever they are, whatever the acronyms are. That was disgusting, disgraceful, and it should never been allowed to continue.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, I don't see any other hands raised, so that will lead us on to John, your superintendent's report. And first up, we have Gina Hart. And Gina, if you would like to come up and use the table, we welcome you. Gina's in person with us tonight, and she's going to be talking about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, as well as an additional survey that I think you've created that kind of captured all students who did not take the other one. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Gina.
Hi.
Sarah, if I may, can I ask for the courtesy of a brief recess for 3 or 4 minutes, please? I'm terribly sorry, Gina. I just I think in light of what we just heard, I would just ask for that courtesy.
Do you just need to step out of the meeting for a few minutes?
No, I would like to still be part of this. I think what Gina has to say is extremely meaningful and I'd like to be part of that. But in light of my disabled child just being announced in a public meeting, I would just like a couple of minutes I make a motion for a 5-minute recess.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay.
Second for discussion. Just for clarification, I didn't hear anybody's names mentioned, but motion seconded and I'm in favor.
Yeah, I agree. I did not take that
I didn't
as,
hear a name, but
as anything but a concern over members' behavior. But, all right, David Harris,
yes.
Sarah Gold, yes. Megan Taylor, Emily Barron,
Yes.
Sarah Fox.
Yes, thank you.
We will re-adjourn at 7:19. Okay, it is 7:19 and I will call us back to order. Gina, go ahead, you're up. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I need to unmute, or can you hear me? Okay. Yes, it is. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Gina Hart. I'm a clinical social worker and I work in the high school. And I'm here tonight to talk about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is a survey that Massachusetts runs, a youth risk behavior survey, and it collects data around risk behaviors, mostly centered around substance use and mental health. And so we have not collected data since 2007. And so for the past few years, I've been really talking about it and pushing for it. And our wonderful central administration has supported it this year, which is great. And so when we are doing any sort of mental health or substance use programming, it's really just important that we know where our students in our community is at. And so when we're choosing programming, we really need that to be data informed so that we can choose the best programming. And so in the past, we've done a lot of really great events and programming in the school for parents in the community. But we were kind of shooting in the dark in the past. And we really thought it was really important to collect some data to see what are the specific in the community. So that's what we did. And how we ran this was, you can do the first slide. Thank you. Okay. So as I said, the state runs a youth risk behavior survey. We had 100 of our students take that survey, and that data goes into the state analysis. What we chose to do was then run the Marblehead Youth Risk Behavior Survey at the same time so that we could create a survey that was specific to Marblehead. So what I did was I matched a lot of the exact questions from the state survey so that we could compare, because it's really important to be able to compare. And then we were able to ask some of our own questions, which I think was great. And so 587 students were surveyed. Our school is 935, so it's a good representation. All 4 grades, ages 14 to 18. It was done by anonymous Google form. There was a parent and student opt-out option. It was done October 27th during our advisory Magic Law. All questions had 550 responses or more. And then something just important to note, you're going to see that as I go through the analysis, I compared it to state data, which I said is really important. Unfortunately, the newest state data is from 2019. They're about to release the 2021 data sometime in the spring, but we don't have it yet. And so that's just something to note, that the pandemic has happened since then. And so when we're looking at the comparison data, it's something to note. Also, something that people ask about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey or any survey taken in a school about things such as risk behaviors, are students honest? And I think what we can see as we look at how it compares to state data is that it is pretty comparable for a lot of it, which is great. There's always going to be students that, no matter how anonymous it is and how clear we make that to students, that may not want to share that information with the school. And I think we have to take that into consideration. But our hope is that that students were honest. So you're going to hear me talk about risk and protective factors, which are things that make our students in our community more vulnerable to or protected against substance use and risk behavior. So that's something that you're going to look at, that we're going to look at in this basic analysis. So gender identity. 45% male, 51% female, 2% non-binary. Race and ethnicity, 86% white, 3% black, 5% Hispanic or Latino, 3% Asian, 4% other, and other category, people self-identified Pacific Islander, European. Hours of sleep per night, a pretty basic protective factor. The more sleep we're getting in the developmental stage, the more we're able to function. So 8 hours or more is the recommended. Only 14.5% of our students are getting that much sleep. A big chunk, almost 80% are getting 5 to 7, and 6% are getting 4 hours or less. So obviously we would love to see our students get a little bit more sleep. Regular physical activity, we know that this is something recommended for our health and our mental health. 71.7% of our students are getting regular physical activity. That is defined as engaging in vigorous physical activity 3+ times per week. This is obviously a protective factor, and interestingly enough, it actually, that data matches about how many of our students are engaged in our sports programs, about 70%. Positive connections with peers, this is a protective factor. Luckily, 97% of our students endorse that they have positive connections with peers. So these are some of the questions that were specific to Marblehead. If you don't see any state comparison data, these are something that we just asked our students. So we want to think about with social emotional learning, it's really important that our students have connections with teachers. Strong teacher-student relationships are associated with both short and long-term improvements on practically every measure schools care about: higher student academic engagement, attendance, grades, fewer disruptive behaviors and suspensions, and lower school dropout rates. So if we feel like our students have positive connections with our teachers, that's going to help. And so we asked students, do you feel like there's a staff member at the school who has really made an effort to get to know you? 64.7% said yes. So that's great. We would love to see that number increase. We wanted to check in on our students' mental health. During the past 12 months, how often have you been struggling with your mental health enough to affect your daily functioning? This includes feeling anxious or worried, feeling increasingly tense or agitated, difficulty sleeping, etc. 20.9% said never, 19.5% said often, 41.7% said sometimes, and 17.8% said always. This is obviously something we really want to pay attention to. A lot of our students are indicating that they're struggling on a daily basis. During the past 12 months, if you were struggling, would you feel comfortable speaking to any of the following people? 63% said parent, 62% said peer, 17% said school staff, 33% said doctor or therapist, 34% said sibling or family member, 24% said extended family member, and 14% said no. I think we would love to see students wanting to talk to our school staff increase, and the fact that 14% said that they wouldn't tell anyone is definitely concerning. We're wanting to check in on if our students have experienced bullying. We know that this is a risk factor. Students that experience bullying are more likely to experience anxiety and depression. So have you ever experienced bullying at school, at home, by friends, or online? 23.8% said yes. So, that's a significant number that we want to keep in mind. Have you ever felt discriminated against, targeted, or unsafe in school based on any of the following categories? So 185 students responded that they had felt this way. Of that 185, 16.2% said race, 10.3% said culture, 19.5% said physical, emotional, or learning disability, 11.4% said gender identity. The highest endorsed category was 24.9% for sexual orientation, 11.4% said religion, 7.6% said financial situation, 35% said other, and the other category was height, weight, political views. So now we're going to get into some of the substance use questions. We included a few questions around adults, either behaviors or attitudes, because these are going to affect what's going on with our students. This is a risk factor potentially. Currently or previously, have any adults that you live with used substances in front of you in a way that made you concerned? Only 8% said yes, which is good. So now we're going to look at some of the specific substances. We looked at age of first use. The reason we want to look at age of first use, the chances of developing an addiction are nearly 7 times higher for teens who begin using before the age of 15 than for those who delay use until the age of 21 or older. So any amount of time we can delay first use is important. 96% of adults with substance use disorders began use before the age of 20. So when we asked about age of first use for alcohol, 41% of our students had said that they've ever drank alcohol. 38.9% said that happened 16 or younger. And so we're looking at an early use issue. Alcohol use in the past 30 days. Anything in the past 30 days is going to give us a better picture of what's going on currently. 26.3% said that they had consumed alcohol in the past 30 days. Age of first use electronic nicotine vape product. So only 19.2% of students said that they had used an electronic nicotine vape product. So the state YRBS doesn't differentiate between marijuana and nicotine vaping. I really wanted to do that because they're two completely different substances. 19.2% seems low. And when I looked at that, I reached out to the state YRBS and said, why does it seem so low? Because I think people feel like more than that is our vaping. And so actually what we found, before I go on to the next slide, I'll just say that of that 19.2%, 18% said that they started 16 or younger. So again, we're looking at early use for that. Go to the next slide. So when I reached out to find out if I said something seems wrong here, but when I reached out, what I found was this is the most updated data we have in this yellow category this is national data from 2021. And what they explained was significant decreases in use across many substances, including those most commonly used in adolescents. vaped nicotine. The 2021 decrease in vaping for both marijuana and tobacco followed sharp increases in use between 2017 and 2019, and then they leveled off in 2020. The pandemic really saw first use decline because so much of first use is socially driven. Sometimes it happens in schools. It happens when students or adolescents are together. During that chunk of time when they weren't in school consistently, they weren't together consistently, it did delay first use. And so even though substance use in general for adults was up during the pandemic, first use was, what we're seeing from the data, was delayed. And so that's a great thing. I think hopefully we're going to take the youth risk behavior survey every fall. I would imagine that when we take it again, we're going to see a pretty sharp increase in this. And so, but I was happy to see that. I think that shows that our students were hopefully honest, and that data is comparable to state data and it's accurate. Age of first use marijuana, THC, this does not include CBD or hemp products. 23% indicated marijuana use. Of that, 21.4% said 16 or younger. Marijuana use in the past 30 days, 13.7%. Okay, so social norms theory states that our behavior is influenced by misperceptions of how our peers think and act. So if we think our peers are doing something, we're going to be more likely to engage in that. So we really wanted to see, do our students think, how much do our students think that their peers are using alcohol or marijuana? So what percentage of your peers do you think are drinking alcohol or using marijuana on a regular basis? The highest category was 25%, 26 to 50%. If you think back to the last few slides I showed you, each of those was less than 30%. So our students have a misconception of how many of their peers are using, which is something that's really important for us to know. Would your parents or guardians be upset or give you a consequence if they knew you were using alcohol or marijuana? Parental attitudes towards substance use are important. And so 87% said that their parents would be upset or give them a consequence, which I think is a protective factor. Other data. So there were a lot of questions on this in the purpose of time. We just kind of put together what we thought was important. Low percentages of other addictive substances. We asked about lifetime use, 7% cigarettes, 0.5% non-prescription opiates like heroin or fentanyl, 1.1% benzodiazepines, Xanax, Ativan, Klonopin, etc. 1% cocaine, 1% other stimulant use, Adderall, MDMA, or Molly, methamphetamine. Some other significant data. 8% tried nicotine vape products at 13 to 14 years old, which is in our middle school ages and very young. And I just thought it was really interesting. Of the other addictive substances, 3.7% hallucinogen use, acid, PCP, or mushrooms. That was one of the higher ones. So I just thought that was important to know. So what do we do with this information? So this is just a basic analysis of the data. We talked about having an early use issue. And so we want to look at evidence-based programming at the lower level schools. Prevention is its own science. People that are working on treatment and recovery, that's one thing, but prevention is really different. So it often has less to do with the dangers of substance use. There's research and evidence out there that shows that basic education and awareness campaigns about the dangers of drug and alcohol are not effective in behavior change. So we want to focus in the younger ages about more addressing the protective and risk factors. Social norms, so programming at the middle and high school level targeted sharing the real data around use. One of the things that we've been missing over the last few years that I would love to see is some sort of student-led or involved initiatives around substance use prevention. We talked about our students' mental health, social emotional learning and mental health support, programming at all levels that supports the needs of our students in these areas to enhance protective and risk and reduce risk factors. I think our district does a great job at this, but we just need to keep doing that. And then using the YRBS as an annual tool. It's the only way to assess where our community stands and analyze trends over time. It's a way to see if the implemented programming is effective. And so we've done a lot over the last 5 years, parent education nights, student assemblies, health curriculum. We have some tier 2 interventions that have been great. And like I said at the beginning, we really just kind of picked what we thought was helpful and those things we think were helpful, but when the pandemic happened, we kind of took a breathing year to say, let's collect some data. Let's really start to kind of come up with a consistent plan that we can implement each year. That we have some tier 2 interventions. We have some tier 1 interventions. We have some parent education nights that we do a few things a year that people can really access resources and do some awareness, but that's evidence-based and it fits the needs of our district. So that's the takeaway and the recommendation. Hope that this is interesting and helpful. And thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you, Gina.
Done.
This was
Just
really
done.
right. This was really interesting, and I've been looking forward to this survey for a while, of course. And I'm wondering, and not all of them to the committee as well, but I can't help myself not just to jump in and ask. With your takeaways, it occurs to me that there's a lot of research about the amount of traumatic incidents that kids experience, and as we grow through the lifespan, that lead to substance use of any kind and substance use disorders. So I wonder, has there been any conversation at this point? Clearly you're aware of that, not surprised. And is there any conversation about, like, at the very low levels, sort of that type, and given everything we know about pandemic and some of the traumas, both big T and little t, that all of us, most importantly, our students have experienced, about sort of targeting that piece so that we're hopefully not setting kids up as they move through to really increase numbers.
Yeah, and so what I can say, because I'm not in the lower level schools, I could definitely say that it's been discussed. And I think what's already happening is, and how it relates to this, is we're talking about like adverse childhood experiences that could lead to potential risk behaviors, the risk and protective factors, a lot of the protective factors that we can build up to help our students, be aware and have the skills to avoid some of these risk behaviors. I think it's really embedded in a lot of the social emotional learning work that's being done. I think what we're missing is that connection piece. We're doing this because SEL is great, but also because it can prevent so many risk behaviors down the road. I think what we've been missing and what we're hopefully going to do in the next few years is district wide. We're focusing a ton on the high school, which is important because that's where we're seeing a lot of the behaviors. But we really do need to kind of get down at the lower levels, because prevention is going to look so different levels than it is at high school. So I think you bring up an important point. I think we're talking about it, but I do think the piece that's missing is kind of the implementation and the thread that goes through the whole district. And so hopefully those are things that we can work on as we go.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else?
No, I think, just going through this for the first time, the early use data is the concern piece, right? And so I think that's your point, right? So like, if we know early use is an issue, what are we doing to set our kids up so that we're actually addressing that? So that's what stuck out to me. But I appreciate the data and the information, and it's a useful place for us to start from.
I have a quick question just on the data points. I know, what is a good percentage? Because I know it's never going to be zero of kids doing stuff. And so 20 was like that average of the substance use. What's a better number? Like, what are we trying to get to?
I think that's a great question. And I think that's why we look at the state data to see where the other communities in our state are at. But just because we might be at the same level of state data doesn't mean that that's good or bad.
Right.
But I actually think that's a really good question. I think we definitely want to be somewhere like a quarter, like 25% or less, I think would be what we want to shoot for.
Yep.
Because I think it's important too. We have to normalize some of this. Teenagers are going to engage in some of this. It doesn't always mean that they're going to become addicted or have negative consequences from it. And I think balancing like the harm reduction ideas around making sure that if they are going to use it, they do that appropriately and that doesn't lead to addictive behaviors. So I think we do have to accept, like you said, it's never going to be zero. But I think we definitely want to hope that it's less than a quarter of our population that are using regularly. Ever have tried, I think, is experimenting, not necessarily going to lead to an addiction, because that's when we're in the danger zone. But I don't have a specific answer. I think that's a really great question to answer as we continue to look at the data, though.
Sarah?
Yes, Gina, can you let us know what next steps would be? This is a great first step, collecting the data, but what are next steps?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And so I think we've collected the data. I think the next step is to collect the data again, I think, so we have a more accurate representation of what's going on now that hopefully the pandemic has evened out. And I think we need to talk at each school about, excuse me, what our goals are. I think I'm actually meeting with my principal on Monday to talk about what we're doing next year. Really, in the high school, our goal is to do curriculum-based lessons, which the health classes are already doing. I actually go in and do a substance use lesson myself. We want to have one parent education night a year. We want to have one student awareness assembly a year, and then we want some tier 2 interventions. So I think what you're asking for, I think, is more specifics. I think we really need to take the time to look at evidence-based programming that fits the needs of what we just talked about. And so I think we're looking at a few events a year with some ongoing tier 2 interventions that we can provide for students that either are already at risk or struggling with substance use. And so I think when we decide exactly what we're doing, we'll definitely share those dates out, and we can share that with the school committee as soon as we have it. But I think we need to be looking at some specific several events a year with some ongoing support and resources, I think, as well available for parents.
But I think to your point earlier, and this is probably more directed to John, is like, this is not specific to the high school. So from a district perspective, I am interested to see like what that plan is and how that all lines up together.
Yeah, I think Gina made a great point when she said that we have to look how this, I like how you said thread, how it threads through the whole district, starting from like the very beginning. And can I just ask, when you say tier 2 supports, what does that mean in substance?
Yeah, so like a tier 1 intervention would be something in our health classes where all the students that are in a health class get that support. Or like, for example, I can even talk a little bit, this might answer Sarah's question, a little bit about some of the things we've done in the past. We did the Improbable Players, which is an evidence-based program where it's a theater production where they come and they talk about how substance use affects the family. And we did that for our sophomores and juniors a few years ago. That would be a tier 1 intervention because the whole grade gets it. Tier 2 would be something like a substance use group for students who had disciplinary issues and need support around it can come and, excuse me, can come and get like some psychoed or counseling around it. So tier 2 being a little bit more specific.
Yeah. Just take a sip of water. So I recently heard someone saying, I can't remember if it was Dan at the SAC or where it was at, but sort of the interesting piece that if this was done right now, the sort of the wonder around the back to the beginning of the presentation about having meaningful adult interactions and support and kind of a relationship that they were looking for, that was like 60-some%. That wondering, particularly given the pandemic and how disrupted it's made, not only just the freshmen, but, basically every other grade, that wondering sort of now that we've had a more normal year, if that would be higher at this point in the year. And so it was an interesting wonder that made a lot of sense and probable and a good thing.
I think the timing of year that we asked that question too is important. It was at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have something? No, but I feel like we should let you know.
I'll follow up.
Yeah. Sorry, I get to go.
No, it's okay. We've all been there.
And we really appreciate this. And I'm fascinated, next year to have you back and learn, especially with the vaping piece. That was fascinating to me. And I'm sure you've seen it just as much, sort of like pre-pandemic. It was kind of all encompassing, and then it just paused. And now it's funny because I've started over the past month or two to hear more about it again. And that it's, kind of tricking its way back up to being a problem. So it'll be interesting to see what that data is next fall.
Yes. And we will take the survey again every year, right, Dr. Becker?
Absolutely. Yes.
Great. Do they ever do it at the middle school level?
We haven't yet, but it's something to talk about.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, John, I will pass it over to you for your district updates.
Sure. Just a couple updates. The stipend committee continues to meet. I think we have come to a final place for club and activity and team leader stipends. So that is set. We continue to meet on perhaps the bigger part of our stipends, which are athletic coaching stipends. And so there are several proposals on the table currently looking at the number of categories that we have and then how many steps are within each category. And so a couple proposals have come in. Michelle has been vetting them and costing them out. And so I am very hopeful that we will have this resolved by the end of the year so that these can go into effect for next year. The other update that I had, was there any questions on that?
Just can you remind me who's working on that with you and Michelle?
Sure. It's Dan Bauer, Matt Fox, Michelle, and I. It's Andrew Scolia at high school, Greg Siglarski, the athletic director,
Right.
Sally Chevry, and Jonathan Heller for
Okay.
the MEA.
And then
Great.
will we see any summary data from
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah.
I'm just curious how that all kind of fleshes out in terms of budget implications.
And then the Brown School principal search had its final round of interviews today. We had a search committee meeting on Tuesday. We did the final interviews today, and I am hopeful that we will have an announcement for the Brown School principal at school committee next week.
Very exciting. That's
Questions
it.
on that? That's it.
Any questions?
And when would it be anticipated that the position would start?
July 1.
July 1.
Wait, bated breath, John.
It has been a very comprehensive process.
Yes.
There are more levels, there have been more levels in this search process than prior searches. And I think some really nice pieces have emerged that we'll want to consider for future searches as well.
All right, Michelle, that moves us into the finance and organizational support section, and you are up with a monthly financial report.
Yes, thank you. So the financial report that was distributed earlier this week is as of March 31st. At this point in the year, we were 61% of the way through our expense budget or our whole operating budget, just 25,668,000 in expenditures. So we do have a couple areas that we continue to monitor as we have all along and during this year. So we're currently projecting a deficit in the out-of-district tuition, which we knew about, but right now the current figure we're looking at is 552,000. This is due to additional out-of-district placements to meet the needs of our students and also a reduction in the tuition in revenue. We had some students that started with us who have actually withdrawn from the program. So those were unanticipated even 2 months ago. But not to worry, these shortfalls will be able to be funded through savings that we've realized through unfilled positions. It's not positions that we don't need. Certainly, if we had these positions filled, it would be less of a demand on our staff. So I don't want to say we have surplus funds because certainly we do not. But due to just the difficulty in filling the positions this year, we have come up with a large surplus in our salary budget piece. So that is going to cover all of our deficits for this coming year. The second area we're looking at is out-of-district transportation costs. These costs are split between our special education IDEA grant and the operating budget, with most of the expenses falling towards the grant. This will be covered by some discretionary funds within that grant, and the additional will be covered by the operating budget. Savings due to those unfilled positions again. Next is our substitute account. So far, we have spent 178,000 of that account, or 78% of the budget line. We actually received about $100,000 in COVID reimbursement sick time from the state, which we applied to this account because we had credited all employees with their sick time back that were eligible for it. And if we didn't have this $100,000 one-time offset, we would be running a deficit at this point. So because of that funding, we are in okay shape. I think we will be close to breaking even in this account by the end of the year. And lastly, our custodian overtime account is now in deficit as we anticipated, or as I anticipated. Currently, we've spent just over $75,000, which is our budget amount. We will be able to cover this deficit with the surplus from the unfilled positions or just vacant positions within the custodial lines. We have had 2 bus drivers vacant all year long. We have had a number of custodians on extended leaves this year. So it gives us some savings, and but it's also causing us to go into overtime on a recurring regular basis. Lastly, I'm also attaching an ESSER status report of the 3 ESSER grants that we have. We have the ESSER 1, 2, and 3 grants. Total spent for all those 3 grants is $681,000. We have encumbered $89,000, and we have about $480,000 left that has not been spent. The first of these grants is actually expiring this September, but we pretty much have spent all of it with the exception of a couple thousand. ESSER 2 is right behind it. I think we've spent all of it, but about 40,000. So we're really into the ESSER 3 funds at this point, which do not expire till 2024. So certainly we want to use them in the best means possible to impact our students, but we're in no hurry to spend them right now. Any questions about the report?
Sarah?
Yes, Michelle, do you have a sense, there's a lot of items where we're running in a very, very deep deficit. But luckily, or unluckily, depending on which way you look at it, we're able to make that up because we are so understaffed right now because there's a staffing shortage out there. We are trying to hire these people. We just are unable to. Do you now, or could you present us a number maybe next week of if we were fully staffed, what the actual deficit would be? Because I think that number is really good for people to understand, as we move forward through the budget process. Because I think when people hear there's a surplus, it's really hard to understand that it's not a true surplus. It's that we're running understaffed because we can't hire staff.
Right, absolutely. Honestly, that figure would be approximately $600,000 to $700,000. We would have those sped tuitions that we're using the unfilled position funds for, and a good portion of the transportation piece. So probably that would be about roughly $700,000, which is a significant amount of money.
And we all know the only place you find $700,000 mid-year is salaries. So yes, we're fortunate, and it just highlights, the budget situation we are in and why moving forward it is so important that we stabilize that volatility. Has there been any additional out-of-district placements beyond, because I know that is a constant moving target, and we do a lot of work to project that, but again, it being what it is, it's hard. Have there been any additional that would rise above the, 884 or 886 that we plan for next year?
We're looking at that number right now. So we're taking that into consideration and looking at that. And we are looking at hopefully preserving some of our carryover circuit breaker funds from last year, if at all possible, to cushion some of that for next year. And I also do mention that we are not anticipating having to dip into the special education reserve fund this year, as we had initially thought we might have to, but we will not have to do that.
Thank you, Michelle, for giving a very thorough report.
Glad to hear that we're not going to have to dip into the reserve.
99% sure. We will not have to.
Okay.
Right, and I think there are a few things here that are one time. The COVID has ended. The Massachusetts benefit, I believe, expired April 1st or in that.
Yeah, right about
that time, my place of work as well. So that benefit there won't.
Right.
Well, hopefully, if we don't have a pandemic, we'll be good to go with that. But I think it's interesting too, because I can wait, but since we're talking about finance, so Article 27 was the transfer funds to the special education stabilization account that's been in place for 3 years now. And so the FinCom voted to have a recommendation at town meeting, because at the time when we were before FinCom, Michelle wanted to be able to do this more complete dive. And as more weeks went by, obviously we know closer and closer in where we are. And so I learned something and we understand, we found through Steve, my understanding always was that the money was swept back into free cash every year. But we learned that this is a true stabilization account. So the money stays in that account. Had we needed to spend some of it, say $50,000, we would have gone back to ask the finance committee to fund another $50,000. So it would get back to the 250, I believe.
Correct.
So
That's my understanding.
yeah, so that's good news because we don't need to go back. We don't need to make any motions at town meeting and ask
Right. And so,
based on
yeah,
the updates
I let the town know that last week, once I
That-
finished this projection, that we should be all
that
set.
we're hearing tonight.
Wonderful.
So that
good.
is really good.
Yeah.
To not have to, because I think, as FinCom said there, with all appropriated budgets and funding, there was about $1 million of unappropriated funds from left over from free cash. And that was just, a level of safety and security for what might and could happen throughout any given year. They didn't really want to go below that number. So that's good news.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle.
All right, we had schedules, so I will ask for a motion to approve the identified schedule of bills totaling $554,906.94.
So moved.
David moved. Second. Megan second. Any questions on any of those? All right, roll call, Sarah Fox.
Yes.
Thank you. David Harris.
Yes.
Sarah Gold, yes. Megan Taylor. Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right, that passes 5-0. Thank you. All right. Okay. So, that moves us to our school committee discussion items. I am going to ask that it's okay with everybody that we the Article 33. Okay, the Article 33 discussion up to the top of this. We do have a member of the Rec and Park Commission with us. And so just to be cognizant of your time, and we thank you that you're here, that we'll move it up to the top and talk about that right now. Is that okay with everybody? Yes.
Sounds great.
So as I think all of us know.
Do you want to join us? Why not?
Yes.
Come on up.
Linda Rice Collins.
Join the latest technology.
So this has been an ongoing piece with Bikemore. It was somewhere around a year ago that we voted as a committee to enter into an MOU with Bikemore about the property at Green and Beacon that we have that's just, kind of vacant, unused land. And Bikemore wanted to put in a bike park there. And after we voted the MOU, they came back and had trouble with the liability insurance piece to it. So they've been working behind the scenes. I'm not really sure where the disconnect is. I think we're getting towards having the solution here, but the liability piece kept kind of popping up. So at the warrant hearing, this was discussed with this Article 33, that it wasn't just as simple as kind of where they had it in their original language, that it actually, according to the town and town council, made sense for the school committee to turn over the Beacon and Green Street property to Rec and Park, and that then Rec and Park would work with Bikemore to attempt to come up with an MOU that's suitable for you and your board and organization and Bikemore. And then putting it kind of more with the town, the liability aspect starts to, I think, become easier to iron out is what where my head is at with that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Linda.
I've had also some sidebar conversations, and I think the key word is if we have it as recreation, and because we're the recreation and park department, it made sense to move the property over to us. We haven't had any formal discussion with the Bikemore group, so that has to happen. So the language that I was given by John McGinn is it's recommended, but that doesn't mean it's a done deal. We have to, as you said, we have to go through the process of the MOU and ironing out everything along the way, making sure we have that.
Yep.
liability insurance.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I understood it. And I was on a couple of email exchanges with Derek today and John McGinn, and that was exactly sort of the concern that was stated. And that, you know, as we all know, we can't make sure that any of our boards are going to do one thing or the other before the board actually meets and votes to do one thing or the other. So, so I'll open this up for some discussion. If we want to move forward, there's kind of two motions that I'm prepared to put forward. One would be that we would have to just pull it up, that we would have to transfer the ownership of the parcel of land at Beacon and Green over to the town of Marblehead. And then that we would also motion to support Article 33 at town meeting. So those are kind of the two talking points tonight. As we've talked before, I think even just the last meeting, I think it was the facilities subcommittee had recommended that we turn this parcel of land back over to the town regardless. We've had this piece out there with the MOU on our land use and sort of wanting it to be a more coordinated effort. So that was, and when we, at that point, it didn't appear to be that we could turn it over at this town meeting. So this, you know, all of this work has kind of happened since that meeting, to be able to provide an opportunity that we can take or leave. So I will be quiet. And ask for comments.
I have some questions.
Sure, I'll try to answer them.
So I feel like we've been talking about this Bike More project for a long time, and I'm fully supportive of the Bike More project and getting that land to be used for that purpose. So I just want to be clear about that. I'm so confused about where it started to not work out, because my understanding when we had Bike More in here was that they were going to use it. We had MOU all lined up, that reviewed by council and approved that the town would support the liability piece of it. So I guess I'm just not clear why it doesn't work for the town to support the liability piece for the schools, but it would for park and rec. Like that's the piece I'm kind of not understanding right now.
So, and Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, this was talked about a bit at the warrant hearing, that if we hold that piece of property, it's designated as for school use. And so this would not be for use of the schools if we kept the property under the schools. If we turn it over to the town and give it to Park and Rec, because that's their designation and that technically it's going to be a recreational park, that then the town would be able to figure out that liability insurance piece that was a snag.
Okay.
From
all right, so that makes sense.
MOU.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Do you have anything to add on that?
No, it was the key was the word recreation. And
Yes.
as you said, you are more educational and we're the recreational part. And because they've gone through several rounds of this insurance. So it has to have the word recreation within it when Lisa Mead was investigating it, if that's making any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then in terms of the process, can you walk us through that again? To exactly follow that.
So I believe that they've met kind of they have it ironed out town meeting and article wise, so that the email that was in the Dropbox and the wording that is down at the bottom of that email is what's going to town meeting and is what's been okayed to be put at town meeting by Lisa Mead and I believe Gary Spees. But it would require us to sort of make this official vote to turn it over to the town tonight or recommend to turn it over to the town, and then also kind of put our support behind this article and supporting Rec and Park to come to an agreement in an MOU, hopefully with Bike More.
So there's a warrant article that we can use, that the town can use to take it from the town to Park and Rec at town meeting.
So I think this article does all of that.
Article 33.
Article 33, yeah. Changes. Right.
Sarah,
Yeah, Sarah.
if I may, So we went through a little bit when we were building the school about transferring property, the possibility of between us and Park and Rec when we were looking at moving pieces of Evelith and Bud Orn and what those mechanisms were. And we vetted that pretty thoroughly. At that point, it was okay for us to transfer directly from the schools directly to Park and Rec. So why can we not do that now? It worked then. Why can't we do it now?
Okay. Okay. So Michelle, I'm looking to Michelle
Yeah.
because she and I I'd asked her for language for the motion.
I think
that we can.
that most property is just general town property. I mean, so I find actually that it very unusual that this particular parcel that doesn't have any school use is under the school department. And it's actually goes back to the 60s, I believe. So I thought if we just transfer it to the town can determine their ownership.
But then they would need to, in order to, because for some reason, because in Marblehead, we always do things slightly different. We have things under our parcels strictly under the care and custody of the schools, the care and custody of Park and Rec, the care and custody of the Cemetery Commission, so on and so forth. The care and custody is the fire department. That's how we do our parcels. And so, because I know at other town warrants, there was a plot of land that went from, I believe, the Cemetery Commission to the fire department or vice versa. So it would be my preference that we transfer this directly to the care and custody of Park and Rec.
Okay. We can certainly do that.
Yeah.
You can just change that last
I
wording.
think there's a way to do that.
Yeah.
Just change.
I think that's a unique
just change
Marblehead,
that.
unique Marblehead thing, because I haven't seen that one before.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, concerns, clarifications?
Can I just, I can't help myself. I cannot help myself on this. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be the broken record. I would really love to see us take the MOU that we have with the town and really look at a strategic plan for how we want to handle all of the property that falls under the school umbrella. I would really like to see us make that happen, because this is now, I think, at least the second or third time this year where we're having these conversations. And if we just kind of looked at it strategically and had a plan for how we want to use this, I just think we'd all be in a better place. So.
And I completely agree. I think the holdout is we've identified our people. The Board of Selectmen has not identified their people for the side of the MOU. So we're kind of in a holding pattern until the town decides who Emily and I are supposed to work with. We've contacted them. They haven't voted it. It's not been on their agenda. I will reach out again. But until we can identify the people that are representing their side of the MOU, we can't. I mean, I guess we could meet with their whole board. We could ask to get on their agenda as a whole board rather than doing it via the MOU. But if we don't know who the reps are, we can't really move forward.
Just my plug, just a general comment, like we've been talking about this for a long time. So let's just see if we can get that done.
Yep. I understand where you're coming from and I don't disagree. And, as Sarah's point is well taken. And, I think, I also am fully in support of this. And I think, but we sort of keep having these one-off pieces of land, and that's the idea of that we would have a coordinated plan. And one just kind of point of information on that, Sarah and Emily, when you guys obviously had recommended at the last meeting that we turn this property back over, did you have at your subcommittee meeting a fuller conversation around all the properties, or was it really more this one kind of because there's all this stuff with the article that's been simmering for a bit?
We talked about every property, mostly in a list of identifying what each property is, because some of them, for instance, labeled Smith Street, it's not obvious. It's actually part of our campus, the high school. So as we went through line item by line item, every one of these quote unquote, unidentified parcels, if you will, were actually a portion of our campuses, because our campuses are segmented. Like David, if you recall, the original Bell School was actually 6 or 7 different parcels. And we merged it as one. So it's just another quirky Marblehead thing. So other than Beacon Street, everything has a building on it that is a school at present.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Fascinating.
What about Green Street?
This is the Beacon and Green.
Oh,
This is Beacon Green.
No,
Yeah.
we already gave that we transferred that to Water and Light, right?
Yeah, we did
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
We did that to
Yes.
Water and Light last year. And I guess I'm calling that, thought that was Green Street.
Just
Also-
Tioga. Yeah.
Tioga Way?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so your motion.
So yes, my motion. Let me pull Michelle's language back up and switch it around a little bit. So can I get a motion to transfer the ownership of a parcel of land known as Beacon Street with parcel ID 169200, shown on the assessor's map as map 159, lot 20, to the care and custody of the Recreation and Park Department? So Megan moved,
Seconded.
Sarah second. All right, I think we've talked that one to death. Sarah Fox?
Yes.
David Harris?
Yes.
Sarah Gold, yes. Megan Taylor?
Yes.
And Emily Barron?
Yes.
All right, great. That passes 5-0.
All
And
right.
then.
I hope this works out for Bike
I
Path. I really do.
do. And then can I get a motion to support Article 33 of the annual town meeting? So Megan moved.
Second.
Sarah second. All right, Sarah Fox,
Yes.
David Harris,
Yes.
Sarah Gold, yes. Megan Taylor,
Yes.
Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right, that passes 5-0. Linda, thank you very much for joining us this evening. We
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. Just so that you know, that was going to be a nature's classroom back in
Way
the
back when?
70s and 80s. and
Okay.
They were going to use it as nature's classroom for the schools in that
In that
end of
area,
town.
yeah. Good to know. Fascinating. Thank you for that little bit of history.
Sarah, can we, at town meeting, when Article 33 comes up as our representative, can you, just coordinate with them and let them, I'm sure they're probably watching, but I think it will help when they're going for their warrant article. If they say they have the unanimous support of the school committee, I think it's always really nice and, to have that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Pat and I were playing phone tag yesterday, so I can absolutely connect with her and let her know that we'll be prepared to do that. All right. So we'll go back up to, speaking of town meeting, to the top of that list. And so I wanted to, since we have this meeting right before town meeting, I wanted to just kind of officially have a conversation around things that people want to see in the presentation that is done for Article 46. I know Emily, you've been doing some work with John on that, on creating that presentation. And so I just want to make sure that, the entire committee and what if they have concerns about is represented there. And then just to sort of delineate who's going to represent that article. So I'll put out just first sort of the representation that I think should happen is Dr. Bucky and David sort of taking the lead on that and presenting that. So I'll put that out there and then just kind of yield the floor to discussion around important pieces of our budget, of our past budget that we would like to see represented in the slides. I will also put out that John spoke with John McGinn the other day and was recommended, particularly fingers crossed that we get town meeting in one night, that we really stick to kind of 3 to 5 slides and a pretty quick presentation. So with all that in mind, questions, comments?
I support David and Dr. Bucky doing the presentation. I think that's a good recommendation. And I've passed my feedback to John in terms of what I want to see. So I'm just aware of that.
If I could, so before we get to Article 46, I just also, so Article 11, the understanding was that since it is sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, that John McGinn will be speaking to that article. So as we know, Emily and Sarah, that the roof for the high school is included in that. The roof for the wing of the vet school is included in that article.
Boilers included in that article.
This,
I think it's HVAC.
the HVAC units and the technology
Yep.
piece is included for the smart screens. That being said, if somebody asks a question, we should be prepared. I think John can answer, but I was talking to Steve earlier. I said, let's say someone just stands up and says, can you tell me what kind of smart screens these are and how big are they? And just a basic, here's the information that we can pop up on the screen. When it comes to the roof, whether or not we want to take that report, I don't think we need to put it on a shared drive, but we need to, maybe we make it available to the person who holds the computer at town meeting, so that maybe we just have a couple pictures of the roof that's in that report, those color pictures that were in that report.
Okay.
And then, on Article 11, we can decide, who wants to answer the question if somebody asks a question about the roof.
Yes, so you're completely right. I did connect with Jackie Belbecker on that to see sort of what their plan was, given that article. And she said basically exactly what you have said, is that John McGinn is fully prepared to talk about everything. But if someone asks a question that goes very specific into our different asks, who should John know to reach out to at that point to answer those questions? So that's the question that I'm not totally sure of, if it kind of continues to be David or if it's someone from the administration. I can see it going either way.
I'm perfectly happy to answer any questions on number 11. I'm pretty well versed in talking about the facilities items and plan. I'm also happy if someone else wants to do it, but I kind of have it all embedded up there, so I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
That's good. And then in preparation for that, Sarah, you have the two, how left field did it in two, I'd call it worst case scenario if there was no support from the MSBA, in case someone says also, we have to ask, as we know, for the full amount of the funding.
Yep.
So the article carries that worst case scenario number of the 5.6. So I guess if somebody says, have we looked for reimbursement?
Yep.
If you don't need those support documents, we can make sure you have those. But there was that scenario too, potentially, that we could get some MSBA reimbursement. But in all cases, you have to ask for the full amount first.
Yep.
Yeah. And then as far as the question about those pictures, I think it's probably really easy for Michelle to just get those to Stephen, because she has all the original files for that from the auditor. And since they're, located in the same physical space, I think that would work, right, Michelle?
Yep,
Okay,
I can
Michelle?
do that.
Okay.
And Steve, you'll do a little overview of what the, a one-page PDF of what the screens are, so that maybe we can throw that up if we have to. And
Just talking about this, can I go to 46?
Yeah.
Who gets the slide deck?
Becky Kerr.
Becky
So
Curran.
who's responsible for getting that to her? So I will give you the final draft.
Yep.
Okay. By what?
Also, I think it's important, as it was, when we did this in 19, for all of us to be prepared, depending on how the night goes, to also speak to why we support this. I think that in 19, that was really super powerful, having a lot of our committee members speak to why we support this. And, because the public wants to know and needs to know that, we're behind this and why we're behind this, to kind of help them get behind it, if you will.
No, that's a good point, Sarah. And maybe, somewhere in either the spoken presentation or on a slide that we can mention that this was a 5-0 budget vote. So we're all fully in unanimous support of this. That's one more thing that popped in my head. I'll come back. Yeah.
Right. And I think once again, to the extent that people, I think town meeting, over the years goes in a couple of different ways. People generally can just get up and they're making a statement. So it doesn't necessarily require a response by anyone after the presentation has been made. It's not required to jump up. So unless maybe there was sure, we'll all be there. Michelle will be there. So if someone had a numbers specific question, we can figure out. And at that point, give a nod if you need to get up and just answer a specific question. If somebody drills in on a question.
Yeah. And I think that's the great part about just, positively reframe how this process has been so lengthy, is that we all have a really good working knowledge on this budget and the budget asks and what have gone into it and how it's proceeded throughout the past few months.
Yeah.
The piece that I had wanted to kind of note, and again, I don't know whether it just goes into the spoken piece, but I actually think this might be a little highlight, that the pieces around the benefits that we've added in that are not going to the school department, but that are going to the town, as well as, sort of highlighting that facilities aspect of that we've sort of are memorializing that within our budget so that we can take care of our properties.
Yeah,
moving forward.
I think that's a big piece because facilities maintenance has been a concern historically. So now we've got that.
Yep.
Baked in. So yeah, I think those are two big points to make sure covered.
Right.
And so we are posted for
We're
7 o'clock.
posted for 7 o'clock, yes, for a town meeting. So
Town meeting starts at
So
7.
as I think this fits into this this part of our agenda. I think one of the things that, I'm just trying to think, what has really been successful in the past and also what are people looking for? I think it would be really helpful for us now to kind of say, obviously we hope we get through Monday night, and pending approval Monday night, we will be hosting XYZ, 3 or so, whatever the amount of forums are that are to answer questions, concerns, comments, and just, help to get the information out there. So I think that if we could do that as a group now, that would be very helpful in the process. Just committing to, we will be doing these forums and doing that.
yeah, no, that sounds good. And so you're talking about forums similar to what happened with the building, where sort of
Yes.
facts were laid out again and questions
Yeah.
could be answered, and not necessarily a debate forum, because
No. Just, could you explain what this line item does? Can you explain what just really answering a lot of those questions? I think that was really, really helpful when we did those. I think, they were looking back, they were in the high school auditorium there. They were well attended. They were well received because, some people really just needed more information. I know we have the budget hearing, but until it kind of goes through town meeting and gets on the ballot, some people just don't know that they have questions and want to come. And I think it's really good for us to be able to say Monday night, we will be holding these.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you want us to pick a few dates to kind of be able to put out.
Or we don't have to necessarily iron out dates tonight.
Yeah.
We can, like the minutia, just say we're committing to doing at least 2 or at least 3 public forums where the school committee and administration will be presenting and answering questions.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. I think, is it okay with you if we say 2 to 3? Just
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
I think that's really going to be helpful.
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
And we can work those dates out later with school schedules and administration.
Sounds good. Right. And I'll just take a moment because I wanted, so there's been a couple of times that people have reached out to me just sort of with some concerns over some things that, just things that are going back and forth in the community and questions about some facts that I think are not quite correct. So I'll put these out there and then anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. So there will be, if we are unsuccessful with either Article 46 or then the general vote at the ballots on June 21st, if we're unsuccessful, we will not have to cut any staff. We will not have to cut programs. That there's no like any kind of math curriculum piece isn't being impacted with that. And there was one more thing that
I don't know if any of that's true. There's parts of this additional override that our principals came to us and said they needed to expand on the math curriculum. The homework components that they asked for at K through 6, those are embedded in this, or at least as it was presented. Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, as it was presented by the principals in December, when they presented why they needed some, there was extra programs they needed and things like that, additional educational programs and things.
I'm not aware that they're connected to the math curriculum necessarily, the new program we put in this year. There might be some enhancements to certain.
Well, yeah, so that they could do the homework component. I thought that's how it was described by Mandy and Sean and Brian, was they were enhancements so that we would be able to use, because the current program, I don't believe, has a homework component, that these were enhancements and add-ons.
I didn't remember that at all. So that's why I sort of bring it up, because again, it's been something that was brought to me.
Yeah. And then as far as the staff goes, some of these, I mean, I know there's one thought that we would, and this is a bigger school committee conversation, I think, that we would just not add any of the items that are in the override, but some of those items are actually very necessary items. There are things like security updates. So we would have to then go within that body and prioritize, are any of those immediate needs right now? And if they are, we'll have to make adjustments to allow for those immediate needs.
We have never talked about cutting staff.
Yeah.
To fund.
I'm not saying we did, but there's one fixed pot of money. If there's things.
That has
Hold on, Sarah.
never been a conversation. And like, as of right now, our staff are fully funded through the budget that was passed at FinCom. Every position is fully funded. So this override has no impact on our staffing levels. The only impact it has is adding staff and services. Is my
Megan, actually, some items in this override, we currently have staff. For instance, long-term subs, we currently have hired them. We currently staff them right now. If this override is not fulfilled, we will no longer be able to staff those. Is that correct, Michelle?
I think all of the current long-term subs, because we're actually having some difficulty retaining them, will be able to be funded. We will not be able to put 2 positions at every school. I'm suggesting we put 1 position at each school. So most likely existing staff will continue. But
okay, so everything in the new override, there's nothing that we would, anything in this override, there's nothing that we would operationally have to have next year. We could get rid of all of it.
Correct. And the very few things that we do need, we can probably get with some savings due to a retirement or 2. We're just starting to hear of possible, a very small handful of retirements, which is going to be a small amount of savings. Which will give us.
So I guess that some of these things I thought were necessary for next year.
Right.
That was my understanding. We needed them for next year.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so, well, Sarah, I think I'm sort of missing, so we're asking for an override that will help support and provide exemplary education. That's been the theme. And
Absolutely.
Right, and that's what's been put forward. And then we have our tracking budget priorities that are recurring and one time. It's about 2 million and 1 million.
Mhm.
And those are all, take the tuition for kindergarten. That's there. So if it doesn't pass, people will still pay their kindergarten for tuition.
Oh, no, definitely. Some of those, I definitely, I truly believe there were items in there that were an absolute need for next year.
So I think we need to be very careful with our words, because all of these things are needs for our district. But
Yeah.
and this is one
Challenge.
of the big reasons why, the question of like, why can't we just wait until next year? Well, next year, not only have we not funded these needs, but there's going to be the additional needs. We can just look at the facility maintenance needs in and of it themselves, that if we don't take care of the ones this year, those will be there next year, as well as the ones that we are slated to take care of next year. And then, there's other pieces that within one-time costs or even recurring costs that are going to continue to fund other pieces within our larger strategic plan / planning for success. So these are all needs, but I have never been under the impression that if we do not get this, that we would be kind of back to the drawing board and sort of seeing seeing which part of the budget we're going to rob from to support this other stuff. That obviously, yes, these are needs. That's why we're going. They've been needs for quite some time, but they've been needs for quite some time. So yes, how long can we kick the can down the road? We're saying we're done kicking the can down the road right now. But if the voters say no, okay, here's where we're at. And I think that was the piece for me at the warrant, or not at the warrant hearing, at the FinCom budget hearing, that having that special education and transportation tuition put into our operating budget, that took that heat off of if that had to be put into this override as well, we would be in huge trouble if we did not pass this, because it absolutely would need, right, those are known costs that have to be supported, and they are now supported. So all of these other needs will continue to be needs until we support them. And at some point, they may become something that has to take priority. We can't never fund a roof. We can't, we can't never get new social studies textbooks. But this year, things will move forward. And again, you can see them next year with additional asks.
Thank you for that. Because reading some of those kindergarten tuition, things like that, it's a need that we want filled now. If we had to kick the can, we could. Some of those I thought were a can. We literally could not kick any further. We just could not. We hit a wall and it had to be right now. That was my understanding on some of the safety things. But I guess that's to the decision of all.
I mean, certainly there are things we want to do sooner than later, but there's nothing we absolutely have to. It's not an end all be all.
Can I just make a comment though? So just to not confuse people, it's not that we can really not have these things. We have to remember that if we didn't do them now, they're going to be more expensive next year. And what we have is going to continue to fail.
Yep.
So we have to remember that for town meeting, that it's not like it's okay if this doesn't pass, because it's not okay. So that's the biggest priority and message we need to send right now.
Yeah.
But we could survive, yes, but survival is not, we don't want to just be surviving.
Yeah, we've done that for far too long.
Yeah, so I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
That.
Thank you. Yeah, that's well put. All right. Okay. That's great. So we're good. I think so. Marching orders, yes. All right, that will move us on to, I wanted to lay out, it's everybody's favorite time of year, the superintendent evaluation discussion. So I wanted to lay out the process. Obviously, we're kind of coming down. We can sort of see the end of the year. And so we need to be on this. So we need a calendar to look at. What I am proposing and have discussed briefly with John is that, so our meeting next week, because we're on an off week because of April vacation. So we'll have a meeting next week on the 5th. That is the meeting that we're going to be at Metco headquarters. So that meeting, although Marblehead people are absolutely welcome to join us down in Boston, that meeting will also be on Zoom. We thank Stephen ahead of time that he's going to make that trip with us with all the technology and everything. So I don't want to kick off the superintendent evaluation at that meeting. So I think on the meeting on the 19th, John is going to present his self-evaluation. And so that will sort of officially kick this off. And then I will have them do by the 2nd of June. And then at our meeting on the 16th, we will look at the collaboration results and vote it, ideally.
So John's self-eval is on the
On
19th.
5/19, yep.
When do we need to get?
We would get them to the person, and so I'm going to recommend that we have Emily put them together.
Being secretary.
Okay,
Okay,
Emily,
so
you are
when-
free to push back on that if you want to. And I know last year it worked really well with Lisa to kind of help combine and do it, particularly a lot of that, the formatting. 'Cause
Mhm.
Formatting was a nightmare, I remember.
So when do we need to get our stuff to Emily?
So by the 2nd.
So by June
Yep,
2nd.
by June 2nd.
Okay.
Yep. So that's 2 weeks there. And then 2 weeks for them to be, blanking on the word, like tabulated and combined, consolidated, yep. And put into the one formal evaluation and then presented at the meeting on 6/16 with a vote.
Now, as a piece of this, I had asked at the last meeting that we talk about doing a staff survey. One of the target items was leadership, and I think it's really hard to evaluate that without a staff survey and a 360 survey, if you would. So I would propose that, we develop that survey and then ask, Stephen Quietek maybe just to send it out, because he has, the access to the Aspen and the tech and all that he send it out to the proper parties. And when it comes back, forward it to all of us.
So I know John has a little bit of information on that because he's done it after Sarah asked at the last meeting, he followed up with MEA and asked other districts as well. I will just put out there right from the get-go, like survey writing, and we've seen our survey things go south in a hot minute. I would be highly uncomfortable crafting a survey. It's not in any of our wheelhouses.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, it's not even oppose or favor the idea. It's more just that I don't think we have the time to put a effective or appropriate survey in place, develop it, review it, and get it in place in time. I think this is something that, we need to think about, get some outside assistance with, and make sure that we're very clear to John on what we're going to be evaluating and how we're going to use that data. So I think honestly to throw it in at this point is a little bit too late for it to be both thoughtful, fair, and effective.
John?
When Sarah brought it up, I put it out to the superintendent's list. 79 districts responded, 77 do not do a 360 survey for a variety of different reasons. Some of them, exactly what you're talking about, survey writing is tricky. I did talk to MEA. They were, because I think Sarah had mentioned that facilitating it through MEA, they were not amenable to doing a survey. So that's the data I have. I'm happy to do a survey with direct reports as we did last year and to include that in my evaluation.
Yeah, and I guess I would assume that anything you gave us last year, you would give us this year again.
Yes.
Anybody else? Does that timeline work?
It's going to be busy.
Does that timeline
It is really busy, yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to work with someone, say, I know Emily's doing this. I'm happy to work with Emily, so that we can present. I guess I'll make a motion that Emily and I work to develop a survey that the school committee can review prior to the next meeting. And then we would have Stephen Quietek send it out. So I made that motion.
So I think you're treading on dangerous ground there. I mean, that would be an egregious overstep of us to go over MEA and send out a survey to the teachers. I mean, you know, our direct contact is Dr. Bucky. He's the administrator that we manage, and then he's the administrator that we've hired to manage all the other staff. So I would be really uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not in favor of any survey this year. If it's something that the committee wants to take up, maybe at our summer retreat and have some further in-depth discussions at this hour and stage of time. I just don't think there's time. One, I think there are a lot of questions that you point out, and how that would be facilitated, and if we even wanted to facilitate it. And so maybe if it does become a summer retreat issue or an item like that for further discussion for future evaluations.
Yes.
Sarah, that would be my recommendation.
I agree with that, David.
Possibly reaching out to Dorothy to see if there are any school committees that do this. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think it deserves a little bit more in-depth conversation with the committee first. I just think pushing this out at this point is just not going to be well thought out and therefore not effective.
So I just want to make sure I clarify for the minutes, there was no second on the motion, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we'll just say that make sure that Lisa reflects in the minutes, the motion was made, what the motion was, and that there was no second.
All right, we've done Article 33, so then we are talking about the METCO parent representative process. So Emily, you had a couple of policies that were dropped in the Dropbox folder. So I'm gonna just kind of turn it over to you, and you can kind of kick this conversation off.
Yeah, so I contacted the Bedford, I was gonna say PTO because I wrote PTO, school committee chair, and she sent me the policy that they just created and implemented to have a METCO representative on their school committee, a non-voting member. So I think we can follow their policy. I mean, we don't have to vote it. Obviously, we'll bring it to our policy subcommittee and we can work out the actual ideas and language and then send it off to the appropriate people. But we did want to get it started to have the person selected. And we were thinking maybe at our next meeting, because it will be at METCO headquarters. So what they state here is that the person or the candidate is nominated by the superintendent or METCO director and the METCO PCO chair or president come together and figure out a good candidate for this position and then brings it to us and we can discuss and vote the person on. So I thought that was a good way to go about it. If anyone has different thoughts, that's great too. But the policy does kind of go over what their role is. They're basically a member, does everything that we do, but just doesn't vote.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone has questions or comments.
I just maybe it's a question, I'm not sure. I would really like to get this in front of METCO. You are going to be there next week. I would like to have them review this and get their thoughts on a timeline.
Yes, so I met with Julia Ferreira today, who is our interim co-director. She's taken over that role. And I discussed this with her and she thought there's will be definitely parents who are interested. And she knows that I was going to talk to John to get them to get in contact with them. So I'll send this to her, send it off, and she'll kind of facilitate that because she has been in contact with parents. Is that what you mean, to like get them to see it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I thought this would be one of our topics when we are meeting with them next week.
Oh, to go over the policy?
Yeah, to be like, hey guys, you know, this is something we'd really like to do. This is an example policy. We'd love your feedback on it.
Okay.
Here's the process we're thinking about it. Again, we'd love your feedback. You know, in terms of timeline, what works for you all given your meeting schedule? Because I don't know, you know, how often they meet either. So I think I definitely am on board with all this stuff. I think it's all great. I think one of the things just the pilot piece we probably don't need, but I think this is really a great kind of base to start with and just get their feedback on it.
Okay. Sounds good.
What was the Lincoln Schools policy that's in our folder as
So
well?
I looked up the two because Bedford said Lincoln's policy they've been doing this for a while. And Bedford took used Lincoln as, a resource for their policy. So it's just where this has all come from. Lincoln's was the first. Bedford
Right, because,
adapted theirs.
okay, so this is sort of a memo. Bedford's goes on for like a page and a half, and
Right.
Lincoln's is a paragraph.
Yeah.
So it's.
Which
Yeah.
sometimes happens with policies.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not the most uncommon thing to see where we've got one in our policy manual that is like 7 or 8 pages, and most of the other districts that we compare to usually it's like half a page.
Okay.
And so, we're working with legal on that to make sure that we've dealt with that correctly. But yeah, so they're representative of the needs of the district.
Okay, so the next steps, obviously, so we're bringing this forward. Thank you, Emily, for the work you've done to give it. And then it would be that the policy committee starts to work on what the proposal would look like, or we would vote to support a policy and then put that to the committee to bring a policy back.
Yeah.
So
I think so. Yeah. So if we got some feedback
Okay.
from our trip to Metco next week, correct me if I'm wrong, and then you and I, which works better because I don't know that we can squeeze a policy meeting in between today and next Thursday. So then you and I can meet as policy and figure out what it would look like for a Marblehead policy.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, I think
having them help us create it.
Yeah, and then in conjunction with that, they can be figuring out.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll make their representative.
I guess I was jumping the gun because
You're so excited. Let's get it done.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think this is all great, and I'm really glad that we're doing this, and I'm glad. Can we just talk through what we're doing on Thursday with them, that schedule? Can that fall under this topic, or do I have to move from business?
Wait for new business.
Okay.
Try to help you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Emily.
Anything, Sarah, did you have anything?
No, as long as I can zoom in the same, you said Stephen's coming with you so that everything will be cohesive as far as.
Be the same as it is tonight, and in Stephen we trust. All right, so any subcommittee or liaison updates?
Go, you go first.
So like I said, I met with Julia today to get an update on how the METCO program is going. And so she's taken it over, and each school has a coordinator underneath her. So really focusing on the children, and they picked 3 things that they're working on, and it's communication with parents and students, figuring out the budget, and working on enrollment for next year. So it's all coming along. She says it's been going really well. The students are doing well. The parents seem to be happy, and things are running smoothly. So that's just good to know, because it's been kind of some ups and downs in the program, but I think right now everything's running smoothly. And the big update is that the Cultural Fest, May 20th, Friday at the high school.
Awesome.
So everyone put that in their calendars. And I guess this year is like off the charts.
Oh, wow, because last year it was really fun.
That's what I said,
Yeah.
but I think this year it's like even stepping up.
Great.
I have to say, I know you guys all know that Unsung Heroes is like my favorite event, but this rivals it.
Yeah.
Cultural Fest is always a good time.
Yep.
Hey, real quick, I don't know if you know this, or maybe Johnny can follow up, but what is enrollment looking like for our Boston students next year?
I talked to Julie through the chair.
Go ahead.
Talked to Julie about that today. I'll have a report when we go to Metco.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome. And another quick question on the METCO. I think it was 3 meetings ago, we had talked about, I think Emily had brought it up and asked kind of what we're doing to look into the fact that we've unfortunately had 5 different METCO directors in 4 years. And I think that, you know, our Boston students and our Metco students are a very important part of our district, and we owe it, you know, to them to kind of dig in and find out if there's what is leading to that, and is there something that we as a group can do to kind of make it a better experience, so that we don't have such turnover.
John, I know you've been working with Millie at Metco on the kind of that search and really what needs to go into the Metco program. I know I had a kind of random conversation with Monique and relayed, you know, some of the highlights from that to you, of her thoughts. And I know you talk with Monique with at least a little bit of regularity. So
I think Millie is going to talk about that at the meeting next week as well.
great.
We can talk about it all at the meeting. Great. It might be good for parents to tell us.
Yeah, exactly.
What's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that perspective will be really, I think, good for us.
To hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if there's any, you know, just within the planning, again, we'll talk about this more, but in the planning, if there's a parent that wants to be recognized to speak or anything that they, you know, that is absolutely fine. Is it David's turn?
I guess so, if that's the next topic. Share screen first, I guess. Is that one up?
Yep.
So just wanted to share 3 or 4 photos from work that's off the punch list that was done over April vacation. So many of you are familiar with this. This is the property line with the Tower School, and in exchange for them giving us egress through their property and making some improvements that were needed along that rock wall, we agreed to put up this nice fence. Even got a variance from the town. I believe it's going to be 8 feet and then go down to 6 feet. So that's well underway, and it might even be
I think that's done.
almost done.
I was in a
because-
meeting the other day.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, is that fence new?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh,
I mean, I
really?
was there. This was Monday. So yeah, the work progressed fast. They put those poles in. They needed to, you know, the concrete needed to cure and everything. But yeah, so I haven't seen the finished product then. I
Yeah,
bet it
I
looks
think
really
it's
nice.
done. Yeah, or at least from
Yeah.
sort of the vantage point that I had out of Towers windows.
Yeah.
They kind of up in the
Yeah.
top of this area that we're looking at the front of the screen, I think. it's
So that looks great. And that was weather dependent, and Tower, I know Tower is very happy, according to Brian Johnson and Brian Dakin, and the new people have seen it and saw the first panel, and we're really excited to see that
Great.
Can I
go
ask a
up.
question?
Yeah.
Is this part of the school, or is that the house?
No,
there?
that's
Oh,
the
sorry.
head of
Yeah.
school's house.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then down below is the other second home that they own right
Yeah,
below
which is
it,
The director of facilities.
Director of Facilities House.
Okay.
I want to work for Tower someday, so I can get a house. Okay, and then the next photo. So next photo, this has been, you know, a big part of the Brown School. It has been the outdoor classroom. And I mean, Sarah, take it away. I mean, you know what these 2 things are. Something we've been trying to achieve, and here they are.
So actually, David, I'll have to get you a new photo, because as of today, some of the classes already were out. I know my son's kindergarten class was already out doing a garden lesson, planting. There's some plants in some of those beds. This is the shed. We had moved the original one, and this is just putting back, you know, what we had there. But you know,
Yep.
when we started at the very beginning of this, and we had the envisioning sessions, and they went out and they talked to a huge cross section of the community, and they came back, you know, after with, you know, parent, teacher, administrator, all this input. And they came back and they kind of did one of those, I forget the name of it, but you know, when you do a survey and the word that comes up the most is the biggest word in the center. And they asked, what's important when you build a new facility? The biggest word by far was outdoor garden, outdoor classroom. That program that Jean Scona and Katie Martin built at the Bell School for the Bell Organic Garden was just, when we closed down, was at 100% use. And this makes us whole again. This is exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Our students and our teachers are super, super excited about it. It's not just kids, you know, playing in the dirt. It's real curriculum real science curriculum that's going on out there in those beds. And it's really exciting to come pick up and see, you know, each day what they've done that's new. So it was awesome to see that those went in over the break.
Great work. So we got that. And one last picture is, yes, the fencing. So there was chain link fence, and, you know, the project paid for, designed, approved, you know, this, call it imitation ornamental fence, has certain safety features related to it too. It's harder to climb than a chain link fence where kids can get their toes in it and things like that. So this was, there was a small section. So that's probably finished. I haven't been there. This was Monday. Is that done, Sarah? I haven't seen, but I think it is.
Yep. No, it looks great. And I will say every day you saw some kid, not that I knew one of them, but climbing up that fence every single day, and no, they can't climb this. It's great. They're kind of just in there safely and good to go. And it looks nice. They did a nice job.
Yeah, it does look really, and that same fence goes along the retaining wall along the back roadway as well. So it looks just a nice little finishing touch. And I thought I'd give people a little snapshot of that. And last but not least, we received information from left field that the project has reached 95% reimbursement from the MSBA at approximately $13,225,000. Thank you, MSBA. Thank you, left field, and all the project team for the work that was done. And so what happens now is, since we're done effectively, the final invoices are coming in. We had some invoices at the OAC meeting on Wednesday. Those would come in, and then the audit will be done by the MSBA. So they hold back 5%. It's usual and customary. Then they audit our books. And when the books are audited, they'll release the last 5% of the reimbursement, which will get us close to 14 million.
Fantastic.
So that's my update.
All right, great.
I'm sticking with it.
Anybody else? Great. We go at your business. So you would like to talk about next week's meeting?
I would like to talk about next week's meeting, just kind of what the plan is. We can start there. That would be great.
All right. Well, our plan is still coming together a little bit because Lisa's been out of the office all week. So, and I was supposed to talk to John today, and my day was a little sideways. So we're either going to take the Metco bus in with the students after school, or depending upon room in that. And then we also have the option of, because we have to get home, and that's kind of the trickier piece. So there's also a van that we could drive down there, or someone could drive down there, and then we could all drive back. I think David is planning to meet us there because he is at work.
And I could take 3 people back.
Right. So if we were able to ride the bus. So there's still some moving parts on that are being worked out. But yeah, we'll go down, after school, and then John, want to take it from there. I know there's a portion where we're going to dine with the Metco families.
Yep. Millie is excited to tour the committee through the facility and show off some of the work that they do at Metco Inc. And then an opportunity for us to have dinner with some of our Boston families, and then our regularly scheduled school committee meeting at 7:00.
Yep. That will be, again, people can come in person if they would like. And because in working with Lisa and Sasha down at Metco Inc., we made sure to get a room that has capacity. And then I think it even has the ability to stream into a different room in Metco building. So if there was any kind of overflow piece that was needed. And then, like we said, Stephen is going to join us and help us make sure that our Zoom and live streaming is tight. So it should hopefully, just a different space, but to anybody zooming in, kind of be the same situation.
Did you say what time bus we're taking there?
So it would be, I believe, the first after school bus. So it would be kind of like basically at dismissal, depending upon
2:30, 2:15,
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We'll get that all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to plan.
I'll iron as much of that as possible out with John tomorrow so that we have all of that.
I would love to ride the bus. I
Uh-huh.
think it sounds like fun and a chance for us to get to know some of our Boston students. I'm just looking at the timing.
Okay, all right, yeah, so I'll connect with you because I think that's a little piece of the bus too, is that we coordinate with Swampscott on the bus, I believe,
Yeah.
and so just sort of what the capacity is at versus how many people are coming with us. But I did, you've been wanting to drive a bus, so the big silver van, I mean, maybe you want to drive a silver van down
I'm not
later on.
licensed yet. I'm not
But you can
licensed
drive the
yet.
silver van, and get a feel for, driving
Bring it on.
13 passenger van around
Bring it on,
Boston.
people.
Anyone can drive.
Bring it on,
Yeah.
people. I mean, at your own risk. But, so just thinking about, we talked about reviewing the role
Yeah.
with METCO parents and talking about the METCO director position. In my mind, those will be really effective as, like informal conversations, working group, I don't know what you call it. So is the dinner the place where those conversations can happen? Or will it be part of our official meeting? I just want them to feel free to speak openly, right?
And John, you can step in at any point. In my head, just sort of as we process this tonight, I would say that we be maybe both, that there's some time during the dinner and the conversational aspect that we can really get some solid feedback, but then also to kind of have that business-like presentation to it and,
Right.
and coordination of it
Right.
at the meeting, to kind of officially roll it out or
We'll discuss as a group.
Yeah.
we've heard.
yeah.
Okay.
Are you guys posting the dinner as well as a meeting? Because otherwise it can only be a social event. You can't talk about anything that's school related, like school, like at exactly what you guys just were talking, like you can't have that conversation about, forming a role, and that's a policy. That's like forming a policy.
Well,
You can post the dinner. You can very easily post that as part of the meeting.
Right, yeah, we can just post it.
Posted, it wouldn't be Zoom,
Right,
we're not gonna
that
be
portion
Zoomed
wouldn't be
eating
Zoomed,
macaroni
right.
and cheese or
Right.
something, right?
No, but you can post it. Like if you look at other towns, like when they do their full day in district or whatever, they post those portions as part of, the public posting.
Okay,
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Process we need to go through. I
Yeah,
just want to make
yeah.
sure that they have the opportunity to speak freely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and that's not.
The other option is, I know we don't interact with public comment, but that's always to the discretion of the chair. I mean, during the main meeting, Sarah could open that for discussion with METCO parents. There's nothing in the law precluding that. It's to the discretion of the chair. So if we wanted to be able to incorporate and kind of my concern is we don't want to have our Boston and METCO families feel like this is your time to speak and then it's separate from, if we brought it into the meeting, then we're having a discussion as a Marblehead Public Schools community. And we're showing that, we all, I don't know that I'm articulating it correctly, but I think like you're getting I think my idea is coming across that if Sarah's able to, through the chair, make it an open, forum piece with those METCO families, that we can actually enter in that dialogue, hear their ideas, but our members that live of the Marblehead Public Schools that aren't, living in Boston can hear that and be part of that conversation too, which I think is a nice first step in not making it a Boston students, Marblehead students piece. We can have a community discussion, I think would be nice.
I guess I assume that would be on the agenda, right? Like that's kind of.
Yeah, but just-
Yeah, but sort of and I think, I am taking Sarah's point. I just think, sort of we have to be careful because our policies are there for a reason. And, that is why we've got public comment as comment. And it isn't a forum that we're hosting next week. It's a meeting that we're holding in Boston.
But you could have a portion of it be a forum, is what I'm saying. You could have a Roman numeral, if you will, be the METCO forum. So it's not the whole meeting, but we're taking 20 minutes of it. I mean, you can do that.
I can reach out to Dorothy on that and kind of pick her brain a little bit for sort of best practice around that and how it would look and just agenda setting and all that good stuff.
I just think it would be a really good way to make that step as being a community instead of a segmented community.
Absolutely. Well taken. Any other new business tonight? Okay. I don't think one piece of correspondence that needed to be highlighted was the Article 33 email, so that's been talked about.
So, I didn't know if this would be new business or correspondence, so I'm kind of straddling the line. Jean Scona had reached out to me and asked me to relay. She was hoping to be here tonight. She had a class that overlapped, and asked to be on a future agenda. She was really excited to highlight the work she did this year, talk about, what she presented to the students, the feedback. I guess there were some surveys, the feedback she got, and some of the student impact that she got. I think it's a nice way to highlight some of the social emotional work we are doing in the community. So I just wanted to relay that. Like I said, I didn't know if it went under new business or correspondence or where it went.
Yeah, sure. I've got that noted. I will put it, Lisa and I keep a running list of, future agenda items and where we can put them in so that we're managing the agendas effectively. So I will add that this evening and we'll get in contact with Jean for her schedule as well.
Okay. And also, Sarah, I think that maybe, I don't know that the proper place would have been an accommodation, but at some point, I think in our meeting, we should recognize the loss our community suffered this week through a Glover School teacher. I don't know if you want to speak to that, or I'm happy to, but I think that, it was a loss felt by many people, past and present, staff and students and community members. I just think we should recognize that.
No, absolutely. And, you're absolutely right, Sarah. And the superintendent and myself and Emily had the opportunity to attend the funeral, and it was really lovely. I didn't know Brooke Yanow as a teacher, but it was really touching to hear people talk about her and to hear her eulogized, and then just kind of speaking with teachers afterwards. She's, again, I didn't know her, but she seemed to be a really special person, and a tremendous loss to this district, for sure. Thanks, Sarah. All right. On that note, I will adjourn us at 9:06 p.m. Thank you, everyone.